In terms of where gaming is today, Shadow of the Colossus is the most influential title in modern video games. Classics like Dark Souls, Breath of the Wild, and Death's Door wouldn't exist if Shadow of the Colossus hadn't come out when it did. Before we get into the video essay, I just wanted to jump in here and remind you to subscribe and like the video for more content like this every single month. It's free and really helps the channel grow. Thank you so much. So where was gaming in October 2005, right before Shadow of the Colossus came out? 3D platformers like Psychonauts and Sly Cooper were in their prime. If you dig those games, by the way, check out my friend Faux Retro. He made some great videos about those games. God of War was also doing big numbers at the time. Hyper-masculine, violent as games were consistently some of the best selling during this time. And Resident Evil 4 just got released on every gaming system you can imagine, including Zeebo? Whatever that is. 2005 was a different time, huh? So, when Shadow of the Colossus asked players to take a more methodical approach to combat and still sold 140,000 copies in its first week alone, it was clear Team Ico was onto something. And now, several re-releases and remasters later, it still feels new today despite how many popular titles have this game's legacy to thank for their creation. One of the defining features here is the strategy-heavy approach to the battles. In order to get anywhere, you have to fall back and pay attention to the patterns of each Colossus. If you go in wildly swinging your sword, you'll be squashed like a bug. It's all about formulating a plan to find openings and exploit various weak points in order to overcome these overwhelming odds. It's hard, but fair. Sound familiar? Well, it should. Because if it wasn't for the record-breaking sales and rave reviews of Team Ico's project paving the way, we wouldn't have modern action RPG classics like Dark Souls. And Dark Souls broke barriers in its own right too. But many ideas that From Software expanded on can be found as blueprints in Shadow of the Colossus. And Miyazaki himself can even be heard singing the praises of Team Ico lead Ueda in many interviews, showing just how much respect he has for the man's work. As he should. Creating a combat system that rewards patience while retaining tension and not falling into boring tedium can't be an easy task. So when Team Ico asked those violence-craving audiences to step back and take a more puzzle-based approach to their combat, it was a welcome breath of fresh air. The focus combat-wise was all about the boss encounters, which was pretty new in terms of modern games at that point. Boss design is the main event here. Whereas many other types of video games use boss fights as tests of the player's skill or finales to different chapters of a narrative, Team Ico made them the core of the gameplay loop here. Plus, look at their designs. They're just so cool. And this bearded daddy? They made this one for the gays. Every creature was monumental in their scope and had clearly visible weak points, so it was less about how much damage a player could do and more about how clever a player was with their traversal of the boss and its arena, while also taking care to not deplete their grit meter too quickly. Every boss had a different set of moves and mechanics to master one by one, with no distractions to take away from the encounter's design. We see this phenomenon a lot more now in games like Cuphead and Titan Souls existing almost solely as vehicles for a boss fight pantheon. It's basically become a genre all its own, within which developers are allowed to flex their creative muscle, crafting unique boss fight after unique boss fight. And while Dark Souls has a lot more going on than just the boss fights, I'd argue the focus design-wise was definitely on its bosses. They're the most memorable part, and the aspect that most players spend the most time with. That isn't to say there's no exploration in Shadow of the Colossus though. In preparation for each David versus Goliath struggle is a section all about exploration, usually on your trusty steed while holding your magical GPS sword to the sun to guide your way, with a hint or two to make things a little bit easier. Another thing in Shadow of the Colossus that left quite a mark on modern gaming. Of course, the idea of exploration isn't revolutionary. Open world games, for instance, were around long before 2005. But the exploration segments being treated as your character hunting for their prey? that wasn't a popular feature in the early 2000s. Most of the video gaming blockbusters of the time were too interested in moving the player from one action set piece to another. And now we have games like every entry in the Monster Hunter franchise that have built on this idea to make it one of the main selling points. Picking up on details in the environment, listening to clues from NPCs, using your tools to guide you towards your next mark. Although, a game like Monster Hunter Rise made the traversal even better through the inclusion of their wire bug system. Much better than Shadow of the Colossus's horse. I have a feeling Team Ico wanted it to feel like you were riding an unpredictable animal, but there's a reason she's called Agro. Oh my god. Are you kidding? I can't! Just go. Just go, please. I hate this horse so much. Oh my god. Turn around, you piece of... I can't. Unplayable. Not really. And Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild clearly took a few pieces of inspiration from Shadow of the Colossus as well. Its grip meter and focus on a few puzzle-like ancient creatures instead of the series standard of dungeons, all of that is pretty much lifted straight from the 2005 gem. Without giving too much away about the plot of the game, Shadow of the Colossus is honestly a bit of a downer tonally. The mood is melancholic and the atmosphere is oppressive. Every time you fell one of those enormous beasts, instead of feeling triumphant, you feel like you've just killed the last creature of a species on the verge of extinction. Even when the Colossus has shown major signs of aggression, you always come out of each fight looking like a murderer. Instead of a reward, after a successful conquering, you're chased down by these, invasive tendrils, I guess. So clearly you're no hero in this situation, and this type of moral questioning wasn't common in video games back in 2005, when most games were essentially empowerment fantasies. You're never quite sure what the outcome of all your hunting will end up being, and that makes for an interesting gameplay experience. Much like Papers, Please, the morally virtuous option would be not to progress in the game. But as gamers, our natural instinct is to do what a video game tells us, without question. We'd rather see that progression percentage tick up than consider what's right and what's wrong. Again, this game came out amidst things like Psychonauts and Destroy All Humans. Not the happiest games ever, but certainly not this bleak. And that's not a bad thing at all. Video games as an art form should be able to explore a range of moods and emotional responses. And Shadow of the Colossus does this incredibly, especially in a landscape that at the time seemed to value camp much more than emotional depth. And trust me, I love campy video games. I mean, Kingdom Hearts is one of my all-time favorite franchises, and that is all camp.
My friends are my power.
The more I do research for this video, the more I realize just how many risks Team Ico takes every time they make a new game, even when those risks aren't always well received. And since their first releases, their storytelling has been subtle but all around you. A crushing narrative arc through environmental storytelling. Again, sound familiar? Environmental storytelling and world building are some of the most common buzzwords in modern video games. But there are very few that take this concept and do it well enough to tell a cohesive story. The entire video essay community of Hollow Knight and the Soulsborne series exist purely because of how intriguing this type of storytelling can be when done right. I might even go as far as to say that the fanfare around games that choose the environmental storytelling approach is so strong because of how enthralling the mystery can be. The endless theorizing and hypothesizing is almost guaranteed to create a dedicated fanbase in online forums and subreddits. With its re-releases and remasters for each new variation of the PlayStation, Shadow of the Colossus is obviously a highly revered game. I mean, it's still one of the highest reviewed games in all of PlayStation's history. So it stands to reason a game that took this many well-received risks would shake things up in the video game industry. Team Ico paved the way for so many mechanics and features that we take for granted today. And The amount of subgenres that can trace parts of their DNA back to this one game, incredible. At the risk of sounding like another pretentious video essayist who ends the video with an overstated, overblown, and overly sentimental wrap-up, this game's legacy and impact on the industry as a whole is truly colossal. See, adding a pun in there at the end makes it a lot less annoying. Or more annoying. Your mileage may vary. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my video essay about how Shadow of the Colossus influenced modern video games, and if you did, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and like the video. It really helps the channel grow, and I spend 40+ hours on these videos every single month, so it would really mean a lot to me. Thank you. Speaking of modern video games though, what are some 2022 video game releases that you're looking forward to? Let me know in the comments below. For me, it's gotta be Elden Ring and Sifu. Also, I want to say a great big thank you to Mumpow, Voxamandius, Dear Papaya, and Puzzled Monkey Tree this month for being my monthly supporters over on my Ko-fi page. If you want to help make videos like this possible in the future, you can help out with a one-time donation or by being a monthly supporter for as little as $4 a month. Links in the description. You'll get behind-the-scenes access to future video essays, a little shout-out at the end of every video, and even some bonus content, like for example, a video of me screwing up over and over and over again with the voiceover for this month's video. Anyway, I hope you had a good time here. I post on the first Saturday of every single month, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!